if you're like me and you looked at the Baldur's Gate 3 release cycle and the hype behind it and the worship behind it as like one of the greatest games ever made, you really had to wonder what the deal with it was, because this game clearly had no momentum. Nobody was talking about it. It wasn't that good. It wasn't that well written. It wasn't some amazing game. You know, it got completely mogged by Super Mario Bros. Wonder and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Is the simple reality of it is that Baldur's Gate 3 was not that big of a deal. And yet, it was treated as if it was like one of the biggest things that happened in gaming ever, right? And a part of me felt as if it was due to like the woke culture and the developers and like trying to prop up Larian as some like goated studio, but that doesn't seem to be the case, you know? It's very, very interesting how this is turning out, because over the past several years, like, the industry has turned on Swen, they've turned on Larian, and yet they're still hyping up the game. Okay? And as of today, I think we've kind of realized what their end goal was. They have announced Baldur's Gate 3, the series, headed up by The Last of Us showrunner, Nobody McFuckface. So, this is their end game. Okay, like this was their goal, was for Hasbro to put together this illusion that this was some like highly popular, successful property, kick Larian to the curb, you know, destroy Swen's reputation, and then swoop in with the Baldur's Gate license and make a series out of it. You know, that was the end purpose of this, was to temporarily make Baldur's Gate 3 the biggest name in D&D and try and make the elusive, successful video game adaptation film off of it. You know, or series, I should say. This is an HBO series. So that was the end game, okay? The goal was to legitimize The Last of Us showrunner. The goal was to, like, you know, keep up the facade that Baldur's Gate is relevant, to keep up the facade that D&D is relevant, and to put out something that they think they can replace A Song of Ice and Fire with. Like, they think this is going to be the next Game of Thrones. And honestly, I'm very, very interested in seeing how this turns out, because the immediate reaction by fans has been very, very, very negative. Because people don't trust Hasbro. They know that they're full of shit. They know that, like, they're the reason the game turned out as badly as it did. They know they're going to mishandle the license, and especially the characters, okay? Like, it's going to be a disaster, right? And this is the future of Baldur's Gate, is just a terrible TV series. You know, it is the Song of Ice and Fire of this decade, and people just can't bring themselves to face it. Like, you're not getting a sequel, you're not getting an expansion, you're not getting anything like viable. Like, I hope you like a Wicker Man knockoffs, boyo, because that's all you're getting from Larian in the future. Like, it's appallingly stupid. It is a very strong indication of where the video game industry is, where they're not necessarily trying to prop themselves up to destroy Nintendo. They're trying to make themselves into, like, solid multimedia brands so they even have a shot at competing with Nintendo. You know, like, that's what I've been observing over the past decade or so, is that it's not so much that we're competing against video games, because Nintendo's stomping everyone in the video game department. Like, the issue is that we're going up against, like, you know, Harry Potter, Witcher, D&D, you know, Marvel, especially, like, which are all these big multimedia franchises, you know? Like, Nintendo's won the console war, and now they're kind of entered, like, the IP war, where they kind of have to go up against all of these woke, subversive franchises. And that is something that a lot of people really do need to understand, is that, like, Marvel is, like, woke, subversive propaganda, always has been. And it's something that, like, most conservatives really have trouble, like, admitting that, like, the media they grew up with was, like, woke and subversive. You know, I've heard people try and tell you that, like, Blazing Saddles wasn't woke at all, and it's, like, the most Jewish, like, fan fiction of history ever. You know, like, that's, you know, that's very, very common across all of these, like, big brands. I would argue, like, pretty much all of them are woke, subversive propaganda, and it is very, very critical for the establishment to keep up the illusion that Star Wars and Star Trek are somehow, like, you know, relevant in today's time, in this day and age. You know, it is critical that they keep up the illusion that something like D&D is like as big or relevant as Nintendo, when in actuality, like D&D has been like a thing of the past for decades now. You know, enjoyed only by woke nerds who are desperate to live out their like cat girl fantasies. You know, like that's that's what we've been seeing over the past several weeks. Okay, that's what we've been seeing since the release of Baldur's Gate 3. Since Astrobot, since Expedition 33, what this is like an attempt at being relevant, an attempt at staying relevant, an attempt at like being as competitive as Nintendo. And what you end up seeing over and over and over again is that like none of this is, it's not doable. You know, nothing they put out is as good as what Nintendo's doing. You know, they're gonna put out their little they're gonna put out their little TV show. It's gonna win like best adaptation at the Game Awards. Zelda will rape it by like billions of dollars. You know, just like the Mario movie raped The Last of Us by billions of dollars. Like what you're gonna see is like kind of this slow, gradual decline into relevancy. You know, outside of this like this claim that like we're adapting the biggest video game property in the world, like what exactly is Baldur's Gate going to bring to the table? You know, like they are going to misrepresent the characters. They are going to make everyone gay. They are going to go down these this path of just not really doing anything like unique or interesting with the IP. You know, we were told immediately that we would never again get another Baldur's Gate from Larian, and yet this is what they do. This is exactly what people did not want. You know, when it comes to the Zelda movie, it's coming hot on the heels of actual relevant Zelda releases. But with Baldur's Gate, like, this is an adaptation that's meant to supplant and replace the original. You know, this is meant to be the definitive version of the characters and the setting going forward, and that's something that I think any reasonable fan would not have any patience for. You know, this is a TV show that's going to be made for nobody. It is essentially a it's kind of like with the Master Chief series, like the Halo series, or like the Warhammer 40K series. Like, nobody outside of its autistic fan base gives a fuck about the lore of Halo, and yet for like, you know, up until the release of episode 1, there was all this hype around it. This was going to be the biggest game adaptation ever, but Master Chief is the biggest name in gaming ever. And what happens? You know, pure fan fiction nonsense that didn't respect the source material, that didn't bring new people in, and it just completely collapsed to the point where like I don't even know like when it was canceled. You know, like The Witcher 3 did something similar. You know, this is the industry's attempts at like trying to change the material to make it more palatable to like woke demographics, to try and make it mainstream with woke audiences. And like every single time, what ends up happening is that it just completely collapses in and of itself. And yeah, Baldur's Gate is no different. This should hopefully kill the Baldur's IP, kill it dead. You know, Larian can't come back to it. Like, and this should be like the next major sign of just how much more relevant Zelda actually is than this cheap D&D inspired spin-off product. Okay, like how about next time you make a game that's actually good?